Gina's hands trembled as she pressed the auto-injector against Caesar Lombardi's thigh, her heart hammering so violently she thought it might burst from her chest. The most dangerous man in New York City lay unconscious on the floor of Bellissima, his face pale as death, his second in command, screaming at her to step away from the boss. I said, "Get back." Felix's gun gleamed under the restaurant's chandelier, aimed directly at her head. But Gina didn't move. Couldn't move because 6 years ago she'd watched her little brother die from the same anaphylactic reaction, and she'd been too late then. She wouldn't be too late now. The epinephrine surged into Caesar's system. 5 seconds, 10, 15. His eyes flew open, those impossibly dark eyes that had been watching her all evening with an intensity that made her skin burn. His gaze locked onto hers, confused and vulnerable in a way that seemed impossible for a man who controlled half the city's underground. "You," he whispered, his voice, "you saved me." Felix's gun didn't waver. "Boss, she could have poisoned you. She could be. Lower your weapon." Caesar's command cut through the chaos like a blade. Now Gina's breath caught as Caesar's hand wrapped around her wrist. Gentle despite the raw power, she could feel thrumming beneath his skin. His thumb found her racing pulse. "What's your name?" he asked, his voice dropping to something intimate. Something that made her forget there were a dozen armed men surrounding them. "Gina," she whispered. "Gina, right. Gina." He repeated it like a prayer, like a promise. "I owe you my life." She tried to pull away, suddenly aware of how close they were, how his scent, expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous, was making her dizzy. "You don't owe me anything." Where did you get the epinephrine?" Her throat went dry, because that answer would reveal everything. The secret she'd been keeping for 6 years. The reason she worked 3 jobs and never went to the doctor herself. The truth that could change everything. The restaurant door burst open. More men in black suits, more guns, and standing in the doorway, backlit like an avenging angel, was a woman Gina had only seen in photographs, Caesar's fiancée. Caesar, Isabella Greco's voice cracked like a whip. "What the hell is going on? And why is there a waitress touching you?" Caesar's grip on Gina's wrist tightened for just a fraction of a second, a silent message she couldn't decipher. Then he released her, and the absence of his touch felt like a physical blow. "Get her out of here," Isabella commanded, her cold eyes raking over near with pure contempt. "Before I have her arrested for assault, no one touches her." Caesar's voice carried absolute authority as he pushed himself to his feet, steadying himself against the table. "Gina saved my life tonight. She's under my protection now." The words hung in the air like a death sentence and a salvation all at once. And Gina realized with terrifying clarity that her quiet, invisible life had just ended forever. What just happened? Gina thought she was saving a man's life. But did she just walk into a war between the most powerful crime families in New York? And why did Caesar look at her like he'd been waiting his whole life to find her? Keep watching to discover the dangerous secret Gina's been hiding. And why Caesar's protection might be the most dangerous thing that's ever happened to her. 12 hours earlier, Gina Wright had been worried about making rent. She'd stood in the cramped bathroom of her studio apartment in the Bronx, staring at the notice taped to her mirror. "Final warning. Pay or vacate." Her reflection showed the exhaustion she felt bone deep. Dark brown skin dulled by too little sleep. Natural curls pulled back in a simple bun. Circles under her warm brown eyes that makeup couldn't quite hide. 26 years old, working 3 jobs and still barely surviving. "You've got this," she whispered to herself, straightening the crisp white shirt of her waitress uniform. If you're enjoying this story and want to see what happens next, please subscribe to our channel and let us know in the comments where you're watching from. Your support means everything to us as we continue bringing these stories to life. The fabric was cheap, but she'd pressed it until it looked professional. Dignity, her grandmother used to say, didn't cost money. Just get through tonight. The tips at Bellissima are good. You'll make rent. She grabbed her battered purse, carefully checking that the EpiPen was still inside. Always. She'd carried one every single day for 6 years. Even though the prescription costs more than she could afford, even though she went without meals to pay for it because she'd failed once, she wouldn't fail again. Bellissima was the kind of restaurant Gina could never afford to eat at. All marble and gold, crystal chandeliers that cost more than her annual salary, clientele that arrived in cars that cost more than most people's houses. She'd gotten the job through a friend of a friend, and she knew she was lucky to have it, even if the manager, Tony, looked at her like she didn't quite belong. Table 7, Tony had said that evening, not quite meeting her eyes.
Very VIP.
Don't screw this up, right? Yes, sir.
And right.
Whatever you see, whatever you hear, you forget it the second you walk out that door. Understood. A chill had run down her spine. Understood. Table 7 sat in a private alcove, partially hidden from the main dining room by elegant screens as Gina approached with menus and water. She could feel the weight of eyes on her, the kind of surveillance that made her skin prickle with awareness. Then she saw him. Caesar Lombardi sat at the center of the table like a king holding court, and everything she'd heard in whispers suddenly made sense. He was beautiful in a way that was almost cruel. Sharp jaw, dark hair pushed back from a face that could have been carved from marble, and eyes so dark they seemed to swallow light. He wore a black suit that probably cost more than her car, fitted perfectly to broad shoulders and a powerful frame. But it was the way he held himself that truly caught her attention. Absolute confidence, absolute control. The kind of man who'd never questioned his place in the world because the world bent around him. 6 men sat with him, all watching her approach with varying degrees of suspicion. She recognized the type. Soldiers. Her brother used to call them men who lived and died by loyalty to someone like Caesar Lombardi. "Good evening, gentlemen," Gina said, proud that her voice didn't shake. "My name is Gina, and I'll be taking care of you tonight. Can I start you with some drinks?" Caesar's gaze lifted to her face, and the impact of those eyes meeting hers made her breath catch. He studied her for a long moment, not the way Tony looked at her with dismissive assessment, but like he was actually seeing her, seeing through her. "Wine," he said, his voice a low rumble that did strange things to her pulse. "The baro, and bring the chef's tasting menu for the table." "Of course," she wrote quickly, acutely aware that his eyes hadn't left her face. "Any allergies I should inform the kitchen about?" "No," Caesar said, then quieter almost to himself.
No allergies.
But something in the way he said it made Gina's instincts flare. She'd been trained by necessity, by tragedy, to read the signs, and there was something in his tone, a slight hesitation that felt like a lie. She retreated to place the order, her hands shaking slightly as she entered it into the system. This was dangerous. These men were dangerous. She should just do her job and get out. But that nagging feeling wouldn't leave her. The evening progressed like clockwork. She served wine, Caesar's gaze following her every movement. She brought course after course of exquisite food and tried to ignore the way her skin heated every time she came near table 7. It was during the 4th course, a delicate pasta with shellfish, that she noticed. Caesar's hand had gone to his throat, subtle, almost invisible. But Gina had watched her brother do the same thing before his throat closed entirely. "Sir." She was at his side before she'd made the conscious decision to move. "Are you all right?" "Fine," but his voice was tight, strained. Sweat had begun beading on his forehead. "Just need air." His second in command, Felix, shot her a warning look.
"Boss is fine."
"Step back." But Gina was already seeing it. The slight swelling of Caesar's lips, the way his breathing had gone shallow, the flush spreading across his neck. Anaphylaxis, early stages, but progressing fast. "He's having an allergic reaction," she said urgently. "We need to," I said. "Step back." Caesar tried to stand, and his legs buckled. Gina caught him, or tried to, her smaller frame straining under his weight as he went down. They crashed to the floor together, his body a dead weight against hers. "Call an ambulance," she shouted, already reaching for her purse with shaking hands. The restaurant erupted into chaos around her. Felix shouting orders, guns appearing from nowhere, other diners screaming, but all Gina could see was Caesar's face, pale and struggling, his dark eyes fighting to stay open. "Stay with me," she whispered, finding the EpiPen. "Just stay with me." Felix's gun appeared in her peripheral vision. "Drop whatever that is, or I drop you." "He's dying." Gina's voice cracked. "This is epinephrine. It'll save his life. But if you shoot me, we both die. And so does he. Your choice." Time seemed to stop. Felix's finger tightened on the trigger. Caesar's breathing grew more labored, and Gina made the choice she'd failed to make 6 years ago. She jammed the EpiPen into Caesar's thigh and pressed. The seconds that followed were the longest of her life. She counted them, her hand on Caesar's chest, feeling his heartbeat stutter and race as the epinephrine hit his system. 15 seconds, 20, 30. His eyes flew open, and everything changed. "You," he breathed, his hand coming up to wrap around her wrist where it still rested on his chest. "You saved me." The rest happened in a blur. Felix lowering his gun, the arrival of Isabella Greco, the declaration that Gina was under Caesar's protection. But all Gina could focus on was the way Caesar was still looking at her, like she'd given him something far more precious than his life, like she'd given him hope. Gina just saved the most dangerous man in New York. But at what cost? Why was Caesar so shocked that she had an EpiPen? And what does under my protection really mean when it comes from a mob boss? The story is just getting started, and the secrets Gina's been hiding are about to explode in ways she never imagined. Keep watching to see what happens when Caesar shows up at her door the next morning. Gina didn't sleep that night. She'd been sent home in one of Caesar's black SUVs, driven by a silent man who'd introduced himself only as Michael and who'd waited until she was safely inside her building before driving away. The whole ride, she'd clutched her purse like a lifeline, her mind racing through everything that had happened. She'd saved Caesar Lombardi's life. She was under his protection, and she had no idea what that meant. Her studio apartment felt smaller than ever as she paced at 3 a.m. still wearing her waitress uniform. The final notice stared at her from the mirror. Her phone, ancient and cracked, showed 17 missed calls from the restaurant. She didn't listen to the voicemails. What had she done? She'd gone 6 years keeping her head down, staying invisible, working herself to exhaustion to keep her secret safe. And in one night, she'd thrown herself directly into the path of the most dangerous man in the city. The knock on her door at 8 a.m. made her jump so violently she spilled her coffee. Gina approached the door slowly, checking the peephole. Her heart stopped. Caesar Lombardi stood in her hallway, looking impossibly out of place against the chipped paint and flickering fluorescent lights. He wore another perfectly tailored suit, charcoal gray this time, and held a paper bag from what looked like an expensive bakery. Behind him stood 2 large men in dark suits, surveying the hallway like Secret Service agents. This couldn't be happening. "Gina." His voice carried through the door. Surprisingly gentle. "I know you're there. Please, I just want to talk." With trembling hands, she unlocked the door and opened it a crack, leaving the chain on. "Mr. Lombardi, what are you doing here?" His dark eyes studied her face with that same intense focus from last night. In the morning light, she could see details she'd missed before. The faint scar above his left eyebrow, the gold ring on his right hand, the exhaustion that matched her own. "I wanted to thank you properly," he said, "and to make sure you were all right. Last night was traumatic for both of us."
I'm fine.
"You're afraid." It wasn't a question. "Gina, I'm not here to hurt you. I'm here because you saved my life, and I need to understand how. I told you you had an EpiPen in your purse." He leaned closer, and she caught his scent again, that intoxicating mixture of expensive cologne and danger. A prescription EpiPen, not the kind you can buy over the counter, which means you either have a severe allergy yourself or someone close to you does. "And the way you acted last night, the way you knew exactly what was happening to me tells me it's personal." Her throat tightened. "That's none of your business. It became my business when you put yourself between me and Felix's gun." His voice dropped lower, more intimate. "It became my business when you saved my life, without hesitation, even knowing who I am, what I am. I don't know anything about you, liar." But he said it almost fondly. You know exactly who I am, Gina. Everyone in this city knows. And yet, you still helped me.
Why?
Because 6 years ago, I watched my baby brother die while I fumbled with the phone trying to call 911. Because I've carried that guilt every single day since. Because I couldn't save him. But I could save you. But she couldn't say any of that. Couldn't open that wound. It was the right thing to do, she said. Finally. That's all. Caesar studied her for a long moment, and she had the unsettling feeling he could see straight through her carefully constructed walls. Then he lifted the paper bag. Have you eaten breakfast, Mr. Lombardi? Caesar, please. After everything, I think we're past formalities. He smiled, and it transformed his face from dangerous to devastating. And I brought soglate from Ferrara. Best in the city. They're still warm. Despite everything, her stomach growled. She hadn't eaten since yesterday's lunch. Too nervous before her shift to keep anything down. I really shouldn't. Gina, he said her name like it was precious. 5 minutes. Just talk to me for 5 minutes. I promise you're safe. Against every instinct, screaming at her to slam the door, she found herself sliding the chain free and opening it wider. Caesar's eyes swept her apartment in one quick, assessing glance. She saw it through his eyes. The cramped space barely bigger than his closet probably was. The thrift store furniture. The stack of medical bills on her desk that she'd tried to hide under other papers. The final notice glaring from the bathroom mirror. Shame burned in her chest. It's not much, she said quietly. It's yours. He stepped inside, his bodyguards remaining in the hall. That makes it valuable. She gestured awkwardly to her tiny kitchen table, barely big enough for two people, and Caesar sat like he was settling into a throne, not a wobbly IKEA chair. He opened the bakery bag, and the smell of butter and sugar filled her apartment. Please, he said, pushing a pastry toward her.
Eat.
Gina sat, hyper-aware of how close they were in the small space. His knee was inches from hers. She could see the exact shade of his eyes, not black, but the deepest brown, almost amber in the morning light, streaming through her window. She took a bite of the soglate and couldn't suppress a small sound of pleasure. It was possibly the best thing she'd ever tasted. Caesar's lips curved slightly.
Good.
Amazing. They ate in silence for a moment, and Gina tried to reconcile this man sitting in her apartment, sharing breakfast, looking at her like she mattered with the stories she'd heard. Caesar Lombardi, head of the Lombardi crime family. Dangerous, ruthless, untouchable. I looked into you last night, Caesar said finally, and her blood went cold. Nothing invasive, just he's curious. You're 26, nursing school dropout, no family listed, working 3 jobs, the restaurant, a diner in Queens, and weekend shifts at a grocery store. Medical debt totaling over $50,000. Gina's hands clenched in her lap.
You had no right.
The medical debt is 6 years old. His voice was gentle but relentless. Dated exactly 6 months after a college right, your brother died at New York Presbyterian. Anaphylactic shock from a peanut allergy. He was 17. Tears burned her eyes. Stop.
I'm sorry.
And he sounded like he meant it. I'm so sorry, Gina, but I needed to understand. You've been carrying that EpiPen for 6 years in case it happened again. In case you got another chance to save someone. Yes. The word came out broken. I couldn't save him. I was there, and I couldn't. The ambulance took too long, and I didn't have an EpiPen. And I watched him die. So now I carry one always. Even though it costs money I don't have, because maybe next time. You'll be ready. Caesar finished softly. You were ready. Last night you saved me because you couldn't save him. A sob tried to escape, and she swallowed it back. I should ask you to leave.
Probably.
But he didn't move. Instead, he reached across the table and covered her hand with his. The touch sent electricity through her entire body. Gina, I want to help you. I don't need your medical debt, your rent, your bills. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, and she couldn't pull away. Let me take care of it. All of it, please.
No.
She finally jerked her hand back. I don't want your money. It's not about the money. He leaned forward, intense and focused entirely on her. It's about a debt. You saved my life. I owe you everything.
Let me repay that.
You don't owe me anything. I owe you everything. He stood abruptly, and in the small space, he was suddenly overwhelming. Tall and broad and powerful in a way that should have scared her, but somehow didn't. And more than that, Gina, I want to know you. I want to understand you. From the moment I saw you last night, even before the attack, I couldn't look away. And now, after everything, he trailed off, jaw tight, like he was holding back words that wanted to break free. You're engaged, Gina said quietly. I saw her. Isabella Greco. Something dark and painful flickered across his face. That's complicated. It seems pretty simple to me. Nothing in my world is simple. He pulled out his phone and tapped something quickly. But here's what is simple. You're under my protection now, which means no one touches you. No one threatens you. And anyone who tries answers to me. Her phone, still on the counter, buzzed. She picked it up with shaking hands and stared at the notification. Bank transfer received. 75 Shuren.
What?
No, I can't. She looked up at him, panicked. Take it back.
It's done.
Medical debt, rent for the next year, and enough to quit those other jobs if you want or don't. Use it however you need. He moved toward the door, then paused. And Gina, someone will be watching your building, keeping you safe. You won't see them, but they'll be there. I don't need a babysitter. You need protection. His voice went hard. Last night, you put yourself in my world. That has consequences. There are people who'd hurt you to get to me. I won't let that happen. He opened the door, and his bodyguard straightened. But before he left, he turned back one more time. The shellfish, he said quietly. Last night the pastor had shrimp. I've been allergic since I was a kid. But I didn't tell anyone, not even my own men. Because in my world, Gina, any weakness is a weapon someone can use against you. You're the first person in 15 years who knew I was in danger before I hit the ground. How did it happen?
She asked.
If you're allergic, how? Someone knew. His eyes went cold. Someone in that kitchen knew my allergy and contaminated my food, which means someone's trying to kill me. And now, because you saved me, they might try to kill you, too. The door closed behind him, and Gina stood frozen in her apartment, surrounded by the pieces of her shattered, safe, invisible life. And in her hand, her phone showed a balance that would change everything. But all she could think about was the way Caesar had said her name. Like it was a secret, like it was sacred, like it was his. Everything just changed for Gina. She thought she was just saving a life. But she walked right into an assassination attempt. Someone tried to kill Caesar, and now they might come after her. Why is Caesar so desperate to protect her? And what did he mean when he said he couldn't look away from her? The danger is just beginning, and the forbidden attraction between them is about to explode. Keep watching to see what happens when Gina's world collides with Caesar's in the most dangerous way possible. 3 days after Caesar walked out of her apartment, Gina was still trying to process what had happened to her life. She'd quit the diner and the grocery store, a decision that felt both liberating and terrifying. The money in her account was real. The paid-off medical bills were real. The fact that she could walk to work without looking over her shoulder, constantly knowing someone was watching out for her, was surely impossibly real. But so was the danger. Tony had fired her from Bellissima. No explanation, just a curt telling her not to come back. She'd heard through other staff that there'd been a situation at the restaurant, that federal agents had been asking questions, that the whole place might get shut down. And through it all, she hadn't seen Caesar. Not once, until tonight. She was walking home from the corner store, arms full of groceries she could finally afford to buy, when the black SUV pulled up beside her. The window rolled down, and Felix, Caesar's second in command, the man who pointed a gun at her head, looked out.
Get in.
Excuse me.
Boss wants to see you now.
Her heart kicked into overdrive. I'm not getting in a car with you. Wasn't a request, Ms. Wright. But his tone wasn't threatening, just tired. Please, he's been impossible for 3 days.
Just talk to him.
Against her better judgment, a phrase that was becoming her life's motto, Gina got in the car. They drove in silence through Manhattan, heading toward the Upper East Side. The buildings got taller, more elegant. The people on the sidewalks wore clothes that cost more than her old car. This wasn't her world. This would never be her world. The SUV pulled up to a building so exclusive it didn't even have a visible entrance from the street. Felix led her through a private garage into a private elevator and up to the penthouse level. The doors opened directly into Caesar's apartment. Gina had thought Bellissima was impressive. She thought the black SUVs and designer suits represented wealth beyond her imagination. But this was something else entirely. Floor-to-ceiling windows showcasing the Manhattan skyline. Art that belonged in museums. Furniture that looked like it cost more than her yearly salary. Everything in black, white, and gold, sleek and masculine and powerful. And sitting on the couch with his head in his hands, still wearing a dress shirt with the sleeves rolled up and tie loosened, looking more human than she'd ever seen him, was Caesar. "Boss," Felix said quietly. "She's here." Caesar's head snapped up, and the raw relief in his eyes stole Gina's breath. He was on his feet in seconds, crossing the space between them like he couldn't stand the distance. "Gina, thank God." "I thought when Felix said, you weren't answering. I was at the store. What's going on?" "We found out who tried to kill me." His jaw was tight with barely controlled rage. "It was Isabella's father, Manuel Greco. He wanted to trigger a war between our families. Use my death to justify taking over Lombardy territory." Gina's mind reeled. "Your fiancé's father tried to murder you." Isabella didn't know. Caesar ran a hand through his hair, destroying its usual perfect style. Or, at least I don't think she knew. But it doesn't matter. The engagement is off. I've called it off. Caesar, I can't do it anymore, Gina. I can't marry a woman I don't love for power and territory, and all the reasons my father arranged this match. Not after. He stopped himself, breathing hard. "Not after you." The words hung in the air between them. Dangerous and thrilling and utterly impossible. "You don't know me," Gina said, but her voice shook. "We've had one conversation. You can't break off your engagement because of you saving my life. Because I can't stop thinking about you. Because for 3 days I've been losing my mind, wondering if you're safe, if you're eating, if you're sleeping, if you hate me for dragging you into my world." He stepped closer, and she could feel the heat radiating off him. "Which part exactly should I ignore, Gina?" "All of it." But she didn't step back. Couldn't step back. "You're a mob boss. I'm a waitress from the Bronx. This doesn't work. This can't work."
"Why not?"
"Because you live in this." She gestured at the impossible luxury surrounding them. "And I live in a studio apartment with a broken heater because your life is dangerous and violent, and you ran toward danger to save me anyway." His hand came up, hovering near her face like he wanted to touch her, but didn't dare. "You're the bravest person I've ever met, Gina Wright. You put yourself between me and death without a second thought. You carry the weight of your brother's death like a burden you'll never put down. But you turned that grief into something beautiful, into salvation, into a second chance." "Caesar." His name came out as barely a whisper. "I know this is insane. I know I shouldn't feel this way. But the truth is, I've been dead inside for years, going through the motions of this life my father built, surrounded by people who fear me or want to use me or want me dead. And then you," his voice cracked slightly. "You looked at me like I was just a man, like I was worth saving." Tears blurred her vision. "You are worth saving. Then let me be saved." His hand finally made contact, fingertips brushing her cheek with devastating gentleness. "Let me be with you. Let me protect you and know you." And the window exploded. Caesar's body slammed into hers, taking her to the ground as bullets tore through the penthouse. His weight covered her completely, shielding her as glass rained down around them. "Stay down," he shouted over the chaos. "Felix, get her out of here." But Gina saw the blood spreading across Caesar's shoulder where a bullet had grazed him. Saw the pain he was trying to hide, and something fierce and protective surged up inside her.
"No."
She pressed her hands against his wound, trying to slow the bleeding. "I'm not leaving you, Gina."
"You have to."
I said no. Her voice came out strong, commanding. I didn't save your life just to watch you die. Now, where's your first aid kit? More gunfire. Felix and the other guards returning fire shouted orders in Italian. But all Gina could focus on was keeping pressure on Caesar's wound, keeping him conscious, keeping him alive. Bathroom. Caesar managed the cabinet under the sink. She army crawled across the floor, retrieved the kit, and was back at his side in seconds. Her hands worked automatically. Years of nursing school before she'd had to drop out, coming back in muscle memory. Clean the wound, apply pressure, bandage tightly. You're going to be fine, she told him, even as her hands shook. It's just a graze. You're going to be fine. Caesar stared at her like she'd performed a miracle.
How are you so calm?
I'm terrified. Her voice cracked. But I've already lost one person. She stopped herself. I'm not losing anyone else. Not tonight. The shooting stopped as suddenly as it had started. Felix appeared, phone to his ear, barking orders. Rooftop across the street. Snipers gone, but we've got people tracking them. Boss, we need to move you. Take Gina first. We're both going. Gina wrapped Caesar's good arm around her shoulders and helped him to his feet together. I'm not arguing about this. Caesar looked at her, really looked at her, and something shifted in his expression. Wonder, fear, and something deeper that made her heart stop. Okay, he said softly.
Together.
They made it to the elevator, surrounded by guards. As the doors closed and they descended toward the garage, Caesar's hand found hers and held tight. One person you what? He asked quietly. Gina met his eyes. One person I care about. I'm not losing one more person I care about. Gina, don't. She squeezed his hand. Don't make this harder. Don't make promises you can't keep.
Just let me keep you alive.
That's all I'm asking. But the look in Caesar's eyes said he was already planning to promise her the world. And Gina was terrified to realize she might let him. Someone just tried to kill Caesar again. And this time Gina was right there with him. She saved his life for the second time, but now the danger is escalating. Caesar broke off his engagement for her. But can their forbidden love survive in his violent world? And who's behind these attacks? The truth is about to come out, and it will change everything. Keep watching to see what happens when Gina and Caesar finally stop fighting their feelings and when the final secret is revealed. Caesar's safe house was nothing like his penthouse. It was a brownstone in Brooklyn, tucked away on a quiet street, furnished simply but comfortably, normal, almost civilian. As Felix and the guards swept the building, Gina helped Caesar to the couch and insisted on checking his wound again. You should have been a nurse, Caesar said, watching her work. You're better at this than half the doctors I've paid. I was almost a nurse. She rewrapped the bandage with careful precision. Got 2 years into the program before Kala died. After that, I couldn't see the inside of a hospital without having a panic attack. So I left and went to work 3 jobs to pay off his medical bills.
Someone had to.
She sat back, satisfied the wound was properly dressed. You need antibiotics and probably stitches, though the butterfly bandages should hold for now. Gina. Caesar caught her hand before she could pull away. Thank you again. You keep saving my life. Maybe you should stop putting yourself in situations where you need saving. But she didn't pull her hand away. Couldn't seem to make herself do it. They sat in silence for a moment, hands clasped, both of them processing what had just happened. Someone had tried to kill Caesar again, this time while Gina was there. The message was clear. Whoever wanted him dead wasn't going to stop. I should take you home, Caesar said finally. You'll be safer. Will I? Gina challenged. They shot your penthouse, your fortress. If they can get to you there, what makes you think my studio apartment is any safer? At least they're not targeting you directly yet. She held his gaze. Caesar, I'm involved now. Whether we like it or not, I saved your life twice, and whoever's trying to kill you knows that. They know you've been protecting me. They know you broke off your engagement. I'm already a target. The fury that crossed his face was beautiful and terrible. I'll kill anyone who touches you. I believe you. And she did. But maybe instead of killing people, we figure out who's behind this and stop them first. Despite everything, Caesar's lips quirked slightly. Practical and brave. Dangerous combination. Gina, right. Speaking from experience. Absolutely. His thumb stroked across her knuckles, sending shivers through her entire body. You terrify me, you know that? Not because you're dangerous to me, but because I'd burn down my entire empire to keep you safe. Caesar, I mean it. He shifted closer, their knees touching now. I've spent my whole life being told I meant for power, for control, for building this legacy my father started. I've made peace with being alone, with being feared instead of loved. And then you showed up and ruined everything. Sorry for saving your life, she said, but her voice was breathless. I'm not. His free hand came up to cup her face, and this time there was no hesitation. I'm not sorry at all because for the first time in my life, I feel alive. I feel like maybe there's something worth fighting for beyond territory and power and all the rest of it. What are you saying? I'm saying I want you, Gina. Not as someone I'm protecting out of obligation, not as a debt I'm repaying. I want you because when I look at you, I see the kind of strength and goodness I've spent my whole life thinking didn't exist. I want you because you make me want to be better, to be worthy of the way you looked at me when you saved my life. Gina's heart hammered so hard, she thought it might break free. This is crazy.
Probably.
You're a mob boss. I'm nobody. You're everything. His voice dropped to barely a whisper. Say yes, Gina. Say yes to this insane, impossible thing between us. Say yes to letting me try to be the man you deserve. She should say no, should protect herself, should run far away from this beautiful, dangerous man and his violent world. But when had she ever taken the safe path? Yes, she whispered. Caesar's eyes flared with heat and triumph and something deeper that looked like relief. His hand slid into her hair, tilting her face up to his. Thank God. He kissed her. The world stopped. His lips were soft and demanding all at once, tasting like coffee and desperation. His hand in her hair held her steady while his mouth explored hers with a thoroughness that made her dizzy. When his tongue traced her lower lip, she gasped, and he deepened the kiss immediately, swallowing the sound. Gina's hands fisted in his shirt, pulling him closer, even as her mind screamed that this was dangerous, this was forbidden, this was perfect. When they finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Caesar pressed his forehead to hers. I've been wanting to do that since the moment I saw you, he confessed. Even before you saved me. You walked up to that table and I couldn't breathe, couldn't think, just wanted. Caesar, I know. I know all the reasons this shouldn't work. But Gina, I've spent my whole life doing what I should do, what my family needs, what the business demands. Just once, just this once, I want to do something for me. Something that makes me happy. Before she could respond, Felix burst through the door. Boss, we've got a problem. It's Isabella. She's here, and she's not alone. Caesar was on his feet instantly, positioning himself between Gina and the door. How many? 6 men. All Greco soldiers. She says she just wants to talk, but let her in. Caesar's voice went cold.
Alone.
A moment later, Isabella Greco swept into the room like she owned it. She was beautiful in a classical way. Dark hair, red lips, designer clothes that probably cost more than Gina's car. But her eyes were calculating, assessing, dangerous.
Caesar.
Isabella's gaze swept over them. Caesar's protective stance. Gina sitting on the couch. The obvious intimacy between them. I see the rumors are true. What do you want, Isabella? To save your life, apparently. She pulled out her phone and tossed it to Caesar. That's the recording my father didn't know I made. Him planning your assassination. Him hiring the sniper who shot at your penthouse tonight. Him explaining in detail how he was going to frame me for your murder and take over both our territories. Caesar stared at the phone like it was a live grenade. Why are you giving me this? Because I'm not my father. For the first time, Isabella's cold facade cracked slightly. I didn't want this engagement any more than you did, Caesar. But I'm not a killer, and I'm not going to let my father start a war that destroys both our families. She turned to Gina, and her expression softened slightly. You saved him twice. That means something in our world. It means he owes you a life debt. But more than that, she looked back at Caesar. He looks at you like you're heir, like you're the only real thing in his life. I've never seen him look at anyone like that. Isabella, I'm calling off the engagement publicly tomorrow. I'm giving you this evidence so you can deal with my father however you see fit. And in return, I want safe passage out of New York. I'm done with this life. Done with the violence and the politics and all of it. Caesar studied her for a long moment, then nodded.
Done.
You'll have protection until you're safely wherever you want to go. Thank you. Isabella moved toward the door, then paused. For what it's worth, Caesar, she's good for you. Don't let the life destroy what you found. When she was gone, silence filled the room. She's right, Gina said quietly. This life will destroy us. The violence, the danger, the constant threat. Then I'll leave it. Caesar turned to her, and the determination in his eyes stole her breath. I'll walk away from all of it. The business, the territory, the power. I'll leave New York if that's what it takes. Caesar, you can't.
I can.
I will. He crossed to her and knelt in front of the couch, taking both her hands.
Near.
My whole life I've been told I have to be this person. The boss, the heir, the man who puts family above everything. But you've shown me there's another way. You put everything on the line to save a stranger. You turned your grief into something beautiful. You're stronger and braver than anyone in my world. And you did it without violence, without cruelty, just love, just caring about people. Tears streamed down her face. You can't give up everything for me. I'm not giving up anything. I'm finally choosing something that matters. His voice was fierce, passionate. Let me choose you, Gina. Let me walk away from this life and build something new with you, something clean, something good. She wanted to say no. Wanted to tell him he was being ridiculous, that people didn't just walk away from the mob, that this fairy tale couldn't possibly have a happy ending. But when she looked at him, really looked at him, she saw the truth. He meant every word. He would burn it all down for her. Okay, she whispered. Okay, yes, but not like this. Not as you running away from your life. If you're going to leave, do it right. End the war with the Grecos. Make peace. Set up someone you trust to take over. And then I'm yours. He cupped her face, kissing her softly. Completely yours. Completely mine. She echoed and kissed him back. Outside. Felix cleared his throat loudly. Boss, we've got Manuel Greco in custody. What do you want us to do with him? Caesar stood, pulling Gina up with him and keeping her hand firmly in his. I'll deal with him, and then I'm out. Felix, you'll take over operations. You've earned it. Boss, I'm done. Felix, I found something worth more than all of it, and I'm not letting her go. Gina's heart swelled impossibly full. This was insane.
Impossible.
A fairy tale that shouldn't work in the real world. But as Caesar kissed her again, she let herself believe in it anyway. Because sometimes the bravest thing you could do was save someone's life. And sometimes the bravest thing they could do was save yours right back. 6 months later, Gina stood in the kitchen of their modest house in upstate New York, watching Caesar plant tomatoes in the garden through the window. He wore jeans and an old t-shirt, dirt on his hands, completely focused on the task. He looked happy. They'd left the city 3 months ago after Caesar had systematically dismantled his father's empire and rebuilt it under Felix's leadership. The Grecos and Lombardi had made peace. Manuel was in prison, and Caesar was free. He worked construction now. Honest work with his hands, building things instead of destroying them. He smiled more, slept better, touched her like she was precious every single day. And Gina, she was back in nursing school, online classes with Caesar's full support and encouragement, slowly facing her fears, slowly healing the wound that had never properly closed. They were building something new together, something clean. Hey, Caesar said, coming up behind her and wrapping his arms around her waist. He smelled like earth and sunshine. What are you thinking about? How are the most unlikely couple in history?
She leaned back against his chest.
Mob boss and waitress. It sounds like a bad movie. Best movie I've ever seen. He kissed her neck. And we're writing our own ending. Happy ending. The happiest. He turned her in his arms, and the love in his eyes still took her breath away. You saved my life, Gino Wright, and I'm going to spend every day of the rest of mine making sure you never regret it. She kissed him soft and sweet and full of promise. I could never regret it. You saved me right back. Always, he murmured against her lips. Always. Outside birds sang, the sun shone, and in a little house upstate, far from the violence and danger and impossible complications, a mob boss and the woman who saved him built their own kind of empire, one made of love, trust, and second chances, the kind that actually lasted.
The end.
Thank you all for following this story. If you enjoyed it, please write in the comments where you're watching from. And don't forget to like, subscribe, and share this video as your support is important for me to continue creating content.